Do you think a 41-game sample size in a 4-year period is enough? Stop. Can you stop giggling? The giggle doesn't help.
Sorry.
Enough of a sample size for you to go in and say, yeah, let's do this for 3 more years. Chauncey does have, I think of games, and look, some of this is not his fault. I'm just stats, okay? I think of like 330-plus career coaching games. He has like the 3rd or 4th worst record ever.
Sounds about right.
In league history. But again, he had a 21-game season last year.
Yep.
They won 36 this year. So I went back and I looked at the 41-game sample because they cited this themselves multiple times.
This is why we got to bring everybody back, keep everybody together.
I thought Heiken made a good point in kind of a question. You were like one of the worst defenses for the first 41, and then you were a top 5. So, like, is that really...
Is there truth somewhere in the middle where maybe you're not this juggernaut defensively that's going to win a championship next year?
So January 19th would be the start of the last 41 games. I went and counted it. So that was Chicago. These are their wins in those 41 games. They won 23 games, okay? Chicago, Miami, Orlando twice, Charlotte twice, Milwaukee, Phoenix twice, Indy, which, by the way, I went and looked at the Indy game because I had forgotten. One of, if not the worst, weird games of Tyrese Halliburton's season.
Yes.
He shot 3 times.
He just no-show completely.
He just, like, didn't try in that game.
I remember doing a segment the next day because
weird.
I don't watch Pacers basketball saying, what the hell happened to that guy? And you said, well, that was kind of an outlier for him.
Sacramento, and that was their first Levine trade game.
Yep.
So it was like a day after they made the trade with Fox. So they won that one. Utah, Washington twice, Brooklyn, Philly, Toronto twice, Memphis, Denver, Atlanta, San Antonio. And then if you want to count the Lakers with the Bronny starting game, you can. I don't, but whatever, wins are wins.
And the Memphis and Denver games, there was no Ja Morant and there was no Nikola Jokic.
So I went and looked at some stats on this, just out of curiosity. 12. And by the way, you just highlighted some other reasoning you could add to the context there. No Ja, no Jokic.
A lot of times in the back half of the year, they played teams who didn't have their star.
12 of those 23 wins were against teams with the same amount of wins or worse than them.
Yep.
So already more than half.
You're beating up on the bottom barrel of the NBA.
6, 4 of which were in the East. 6 wins were against teams that are currently in the play-in. Again, 4 of which are in the East and would be garbage in the West.
It's below 500 teams.
14 of the 23 were against the East in general. And 10 of their 23 wins were versus the bottom 6 offenses in the league, according to Cleaning the Glass. And 12 of their 23 wins were versus the bottom 9 defenses in the NBA, according to Cleaning the Glass. So they played bottom-ass offenses, and then they played garbage defenses, and then they beat the crap out of the bad Eastern Conference teams. And all this to just highlight what we'll get to at the audio. Is this really a sample size we want to conclude is absolute going forward? I like some of the pieces, but running the numbers, it doesn't quite compute.
There's also a million of roster construction questions that still linger over their head going into the offseason. Primarily, are you still going to have one of your top 10 picks at guard coming off the bench? Or have they played their way into the starting lineup in year 3 and year 4 of their NBA career? Where Anthony Simons still being in the roster.
Which guy are you talking about?
Either one.
Because there's 2 guards.
Either one. One's got to come off the bench if you don't trade Anthony Simons.
So I thought about the Simons thing, and I want to get to some of these other cuts. There's a big swing cut from Cronin I want to get to. I was thinking about this watching this press conference.
They're definitely going to take a big swing, by the way. Now's the time. They're going to go so all in, it's going to hurt.
Well, so Chauncey is like, the best way to win in this league is defense. And I remember his press conference, he was asked about like his defensive philosophy, and he basically was like, I don't really focus on the defense. And I'm like,
yeah,
that was how he was sold as the coach candidate.
That comes from his playing days. He won an NBA championship because Detroit was legit defensively.
Well, he's learned in the 3 years prior. He learned he had to mature as a coach, and yet the organization needed to learn about him. That was an interesting answer. But they keep leaning into the defensive part of this because it was a top 5 defense the last 41. It's defense. Okay, that's going to be the way we win in this league is defense. I might start looking at the draft and go, who's good defensively? Because maybe that's just where they're going to go. Who's tall, long, and good defensively? And then I start thinking, well, if defense is the way you're going because you've taken yourself out of the flag sweepstakes, why? You're already deficient offensive. Why would you not bring Anthony Simons back? You need a shot creator, do you not?
You probably do.
And so if you're leaning defense, I'm gearing myself up mentally for the extension.
And they're not going to trade him. He's not going to get traded.
Because if you're leaning defense and length and all that, you're still needing some offense.
Sure you are.
Who provides offense for him?
Especially when you're going to be a top 4 seed in the West next year. Who's going to be your leading scorer? You got to have him around.
You know, they like their brand. They like what they draft. So it kind of actually makes sense in my mind based on what I heard for them to sign Anthony Simons, because you're going to need offense if you don't win the lottery.
It's been a frustrating year, to say the least, for me, because of the general strategy that I thought was misplaced from day one of the season. And these are the kind of things that just leave me more frustrated at the end of the year, where how differently is the year handled, how differently is playing time handled. Had Chauncey Billups been given the extension before the year? Had you picked up his option before the year, where he didn't feel like essentially it was a lame duck? Everybody we talked to all season, he was a lame duck coach. There's no chance they're going to bring him back. He's already got his job set up at the next television network he's going to go work for, and so his primary focus was to win as many games as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. The biggest fear to me...
But he couldn't do that at the beginning. They won 13 games in their first 41.
But then it clicked. Don't worry. Then he held him accountable, but Anthony Simons was still in the lineup every night despite not playing any defense. But you're only going to be in the lineup if you're going to play
Again, you need
defense. My biggest fear about this organization, and to me, every step that they're making currently is making it a bigger and bigger and bigger fear, and that is, I've used the analogy before, this is a business. This is an organization that wants to make money. They're not really interested in taking a lot of big risks right now. We don't know how long the owner is going to hold this team. We don't know how long that's going to transpire. I think a lot of fans hope sooner rather than later we get an answer on that front. The status quo is just fine, man, because what we saw happen this year, for them, not for me, for them, what we saw happen this year is they won 10 out of 11, and what happened to the Moda Center? People flocked back like crazy. All of a sudden, the place was full, and they're banging their little bang-bang drums or whatever, during free throws. And look at that. The Moda Center's got life again for the first time in 4 or 5 years. You go on social media, there's an identity. The guys are playing hard. Fans are buying into this. Now, it's not the majority of the fan base, but it doesn't take a lot to win a segment of this fan base over. And what they did this year, again, having the 9th worst record in the NBA and winning 36 games.
Well, 9th or 10th, depending on the coin flip.
Well, that's very true. It was enough of a bar to clear. And so why would you rock the boat hiring a new general manager? Why would we rock the boat hiring a new head coach? Let's keep the status quo in play. Blazer fans will show up next year. They win 39 games and will be sold. We took another big step, and then the next year is when we take our big swing.
We'll get to Gunderson here in just a second for the ticker. I found this interesting. Like, I literally had an eyebrow raise. Cronin asked about, we thought they were going to be in the lottery. This draft is supposed to be far more talented than last year's mid-draft, and they seemed all in on Alex Sarr. They didn't get him, so they get the Klinger. And then here's Cooper Flagg. Kind of makes the most sense for what the roster currently is, if we're being honest, because nobody wants the Jeremy Grant contract to continue. So you got a hole at 4. Who plays the 4? Just kind of made sense in my brain. I loved everything else around them. Tamani, Denny, all that. Joe Cronin said this on saying, we don't suddenly feel the same urge of going after that pretty young thing.
This year I felt like we got a ton of data. What's working, what isn't, what skill sets do we need to add, what types of personalities do we need to add. We learned a lot about our roster this year. Do we have all the answers yet? No. Are we still learning? Yes. I mean, still the second youngest team in the league, still have a lot to learn about and see from our young players and how these veterans fit in with them. So the approach, though, I think we can definitely be more diligent about the specific type of player that we're adding. And I love that we're at that stage where, as a front office, we don't feel that pressure to keep taking swing after swing to try and hit on the next up-and-coming guy. I think we're starting to feel really comfortable with our talent base, that we can be more diligent about adding specific types of guys.
That is, that's a very honest answer from Joe Cronin, and just my general thought that could prove to be totally inaccurate. We don't feel the pressure that we can just go try to find the right need. That's a take that I would expect from the team that's currently third in their conference.
Hey, we're
not
close.
a team that won 36 games.
We're knocking on the door.
And beat a lot of bad teams in the back end of that schedule.
Yeah, you're setting this is we project as a 55-win team with Al Farouk Aminu with the
There's
4.
There was a little
Why
bit
don't
of that
who's to say we don't have our star? Why do we need to go find a star? He could already be on the run. There's a lot of that.
We'll get to that cut, too. I want to play that.
What's
at some
the step
point.
you take? Hold them accountable, Blazer fans. I know they won't, but I hope that you do.